the desert's dark heart. The sun beat down on the endless expanse of sand, a relentless inferno that seemed to devour everything in its path. Karim, a seasoned nomad, trudged across the desert, his footsteps leaving faint imprints in the shifting dunes. The heat was oppressive, a suffocating blanket that seemed to seep into every pore. A shiver ran down his spine as he recalled the tales his grandmother had told him about the desert's dark secrets. She had warned him of the ancient, malevolent forces that lurked beneath the shimmering sands, waiting for the unwary to stumble into their clutches. Karim had always dismissed her stories as old wives' tales, but now, as he found himself alone in the heart of the desert, a sense of unease crept into his mind. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of wind through the dunes. As the sun began its descent, casting long, dancing shadows across the sand, Karim noticed a strange phenomenon. The dunes seemed to be moving, shifting and undulating in a way that defied logic. The sand was alive, breathing and pulsating with an otherworldly energy. Fear gnawed at him as he realized he was trapped. The dunes were closing in, their towering peaks forming a menacing barrier. He tried to run, but the sand was like quicksand, sucking at his feet and slowing his progress. Panic set in as he realized he was being drawn into the heart of the dunes, a place where no human had ever dared to tread. As darkness enveloped the desert, the dunes seemed to come alive with a sinister energy. Strange, unearthly sounds echoed through the night, a cacophony of whispers, moans, and howls. The sand beneath Karim's feet began to vibrate, and the dunes seemed to be alive with writhing, serpentine creatures. Terrified, Karim fought to stay awake. He knew that sleep was his enemy, a gateway to a realm of nightmares and terrors. He tried to keep his mind focused on the present, on the harsh reality of his situation. But as the hours passed, the fear began to overwhelm him. In a moment of weakness, Karim's eyes closed. He was instantly plunged into a nightmare. He found himself in a vast, subterranean cavern, its walls lined with strange, glowing symbols. In the center of the cavern, a colossal, monstrous creature was rising from a pool of molten lava. Its eyes, two burning orbs of pure malevolence, seemed to pierce his soul. With a blood-curdling scream, Karim awoke. He was drenched in sweat, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked around, relieved to see that he was still alive. But as he glanced up at the dunes, he realized that his nightmare was far from over. The dunes were now alive with a malevolent intelligence. They seemed to be aware of his presence, their shifting sands forming grotesque, humanoid shapes. A chilling wind howled through the desert, carrying with it the scent of decay and death. Karim knew he had to escape, but how? The dunes were a labyrinth, their shifting sands making it impossible to navigate. He tried to retrace his steps, but the dunes seemed to be changing, their familiar landmarks disappearing into the swirling sands. As dawn approached, Karim found himself trapped in a narrow canyon, its walls towering over him like prison bars. The sun began to rise, casting a harsh, unforgiving light on the desolate landscape. Karim knew that his time was running out. With a surge of determination, Karim began to climb the canyon walls. It was a perilous ascent, his fingers slipping and sliding on the loose sand. But he refused to give up. He had to escape, or he would be trapped forever in this infernal place. After what seemed like hours, Karim reached the top of the canyon. He stood on the edge of a vast, empty plain, the dunes stretching out before him like a sea of sand. Relief washed over him as he realized he was free. But as he turned to leave, he saw a sight that froze him in his tracks. Behind him, the dunes were moving, their shifting sands forming a colossal, monstrous face. The creature's eyes, two burning orbs of pure malevolence, seemed to pierce his soul. With a blood-curdling scream, Karim turned and ran, his heart pounding in his chest. He ran as fast as he could, the dunes chasing him, their monstrous forms growing larger with each passing moment. Just as it seemed that the dunes were about to overtake him, Karim stumbled upon a hidden oasis. He collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. As he lay there, exhausted but alive, he looked up at the palm trees swaying in the gentle breeze. He had escaped the dunes, but the nightmare was far from over. He knew that the creature would never forget him. He was marked, a survivor of the desert's darkest secret, and as he looked up at the endless expanse of sand, he knew that he would never be the same again. The oasis provided Karim with a brief respite from the relentless pursuit of the dunes. He drank deeply from the cool, clear water, replenishing his parched body. As he sat beneath the shade of a palm tree, he tried to calm his racing heart and gather his thoughts. He knew that he could not remain here for long. The dunes would eventually find him, and when they did, there would be no escape. He had to find a way out of the desert, a way to reach civilization. With renewed determination, Karim set off across the plain. He knew that the dunes were still close behind him, their sinister presence a constant threat. He had to keep moving to stay ahead of the relentless pursuit. As he traveled, Karim noticed strange, unsettling changes in the landscape. The dunes seemed to be shifting and morphing, their shapes contorting into grotesque, monstrous forms. The sky above him was no longer a clear, azure expanse, but a swirling, chaotic mass of dark clouds. A chilling wind began to blow, carrying with it the scent of decay and death. The oasis behind him seemed to be disappearing, its waters evaporating into the parched air. Karim knew that he was trapped, surrounded by a malevolent force that was determined to destroy him. As night fell, the dunes came alive with a renewed ferocity. They seemed to be alive with writhing, serpentine creatures, their eyes glowing with an eerie, otherworldly light. Karim fought to stay awake, to keep his mind focused on the present. But the fear was overwhelming, and he knew that he was losing the battle. In a desperate attempt to escape, Karim climbed a towering dune, hoping to get a better view of the surrounding landscape. As he reached the summit, he was met with a sight that froze him in his place. The dunes were now forming a colossal, monstrous face, its eyes two burning orbs of pure malevolence. The creature let out a blood-curdling roar that echoed through the desert, shaking the very ground beneath Karim's feet. The dunes began to shift and writhe, forming a massive, undulating wave that was slowly engulfing Karim. With a final, desperate cry, Karim plunged into the swirling mass of sand. He was swallowed whole, disappearing into the heart of the dunes. The creature's roar faded into the distance, replaced by a chilling silence. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Karim was lost in the desert, a prisoner of the dunes. He had no idea where he was or how to escape. He was a mere speck in the vast, unforgiving landscape, a forgotten soul destined to perish in the desert's dark heart. But even in the depths of despair, Karim clung to a flicker of hope. He refused to give up, to surrender to the malevolent forces that had trapped him. He would fight, he would struggle, and he would never forget the promise he had made to himself. He would survive.